everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Fail Forward Friday. I am Malesela
and Roche Mamabulo.
And yes, this is the weekly podcast that we showcase on YouTube and all the other platforms. Spotify catches on Apple as well. And we showcase businesses or business people, significant, biggest, whatever you want to call it, people that have failed, some that have failed forward and some that have failed and went bust.
Yep. The platform is on My Biggest Blunders.
Yes.
Where are we sitting at the moment? 150 something subscribers, I think.
Yes.
The last time I checked.
1,000 people.
Yeah.
1,000.
Of
It's not 150 only.
Yes, 150,000. I think 159,000.
Yes.
To be precise. Chances are by the time this goes live, it will be over 160. Yes. But anyway, Failing Forward Friday, we share stories of people who have made mistakes. Some have failed, they could not even move forward, like the story I'm going to share today. So far, the feedback is good. Please subscribe, like, comment, most importantly, share, maybe tell us what stories you want us to cover, and we'll do the research.
Yes, I saw someone actually recently asked for us to cover the pick and pay story. It'll be interesting.
Oh, wow, yes.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, and it's still unfolding.
It is still unfolding. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It actually will be interesting how this whole thing turns out.
Yep. So, who's starting?
Dog? You. Last time we did a heads and tails some other episode, and
I blundered.
You blundered.
All right, so I'll go first. So the rule is 15 minutes or so, my story, and then 15 minutes or so, his story, and then we compare notes and we discuss, right?
Yes.
So the story I'm going to share comes from one of my favorite books, How They Blew It, right? By Jamie Oliver, not the cook,
okay. All right.
the journalist, and Tony Goodwin, the CEOs and entrepreneurs behind some of the world's most catastrophic business failures. So I'm going to talk about, there's quite a lot of stories, and we'll cover some of them. But I'm going to talk about the guy called Christopher Foster, right?
Okay.
So let me start the story, how it ended. So this guy, in the morning, around 3 a.m., just shot his wife, got a gun, put it on a silencer, shot his wife. Went to his daughter's bedroom, shot the daughter, went outside they had a stable of horses, shot the horses, the pets, everything. And then takes like a gallon of petrol, starts, dosing the house, the yard, everything. Sets it alight, goes back upstairs, gets into the blanket next to his dead wife, and then he suffocates from smoke inhalation. Prior to that, what he then did is he took this horse delivery van, these big vans where you can transport horses, parks it in front of the gate, and shoots the tires, right? So how is this discovered? The ADT guy gets an alarm, a notice that one of the alarms in the house goes off. Calls the house. There's no response. This is in the AMs. There's no response. An hour later, around 4 or 5, now the house is up in smoke, and people then alert the firefighters, and they come. As they try and gain access into the yard, they can't get in because there's this big truck parked in front, and all the tires are blown, and now they can't access and get inside, right? So it's a terrible disaster, and this house is up in flames for several days.
Up in flames for several
days, right? Trying to put it out, it's a mission.
I'm guessing they obviously took the truck out the way. So
eventually they managed to take, but then they realized that whoever did this wanted to make sure that the people who are coming, or the emergency services who are coming, they struggle to get in, so that by the time they eventually get in, the house is up in flames, it's in ashes, and it's such a tragedy. As you know, and as the emergency services workers go in, they're not sure what they're looking for. So they stumble upon the bodies. So what happened was their bedroom, Christopher's bedroom and his wife, it was upstairs. So because it was up in flames, the whole floor fell down. Right? They also fell down, but they were dead by then. So as they are emergency workers trying to make a way around the house, and they're trying to investigate and see what they can find, they stumble across the bodies. They realize, oh, there are people who died here. Then they start to see there's a gun. They do their whole forensic thing. They realize that the gun was used to
kill the other two,
to kill the
bullets,
others. Yeah. And, this is how the story ends, right? But this is how it started. Christopher Foster is a guy, comes from a fairly poor background. His father was selling mattresses door to door.
Yeah.
You need to mattresses door to door.
Yeah.
Right. So he didn't grow up. He doesn't come from a silver spoon, as you would say. And he then starts trying to make his way around. He works for an insurance company, and there was this disaster because he's in the UK. So the whole thing happens in the UK. So there was this disaster. It's called it's one of those big disasters that took place. Piper Alpha Oil disaster. So it's I don't know if you remember the whole oil spillage in the Gulf of
BP.
Mexico. BP, yes.
Yes.
So it's similar, but it happens just at the Mediterranean in just next to Scotland. And a whole lot of people die there. I think over 100 people die because they were mining oil from the Gulf. So that disaster, it's a fire thing. A whole lot of people die. So Christopher then, that's where the idea comes.
Okay.
How about I come up with an insulation system that in case of fire, the pipes and other things don't burn. Right? So in a way, he's saying, if something similar to this happens, here's a solution.
Yeah.
Right? And he's just got married. He's got a wife. He's got a house. He puts everything, the house on mortgage. He puts everything backing up this idea. And no one could fund him because it's a unique idea, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what entrepreneurs do, right? You have this idea, you believe in this idea, and no one believes.
Yeah.
No one believes. Thinks you are crazy.
You
right?
remind me of, that's exactly what happened with James Dyson, obviously, where he also mortgages his house twice, and his wife supports him, and
So it's similar.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you believe, it's a skin in the game,
Yes.
right? If you strongly believe this thing will work, put your own skin in the game.
Yes.
So this guy is like, I've got a house, I can remortgage it, put it, right? And so he's building this prototype. And this thing has to work because if it bombs out, he's lost the house, right? So then he builds this thing, and he goes, because now he's tagged, because he works for an insurance company. He used to work for an insurance company, right? In fact, he was working for an insurance company, but this is his side thing. And he's hoping that other insurance companies will buy it. And if they like it and it works, so he's demonstrating this thing and he's holding his fingers that this thing has to work. And they bend this whole thing, right, with his product in. They bend the whole thing with his product in, and it works, right? The damage is minimal, right? Boom, eureka moment. And then now he starts lending these contracts from insurance companies. He leaves his job and starts lending these contracts. He does big projects because remember this thing is for this, construction, big catastrophic thing. So starts making. I think at some point he was making 1.7 million pounds a year. Right? He was making more money back in the day. He was making more money than he could spend.
Yeah. When was this again?
This is taking place in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Late 1990s, 2000s.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So he's in, right? He's making money. He's building the business. It's going. Now he starts, and I think this happens with almost everybody. He starts to get bored.
Sure.
Right? He develops this hobby where he then does, shooting. These guys buy rifles and they go into they start shooting all these animals, right? Now that's his hobby. And he would do this 4 days in a week, right? Going hunting and shooting 4 days in a week. He leaves the business behind, right? Which is something that led to the collapse because he then lost focus.
Sure.
He then tried doing other things. He tried property, which went wrong in one of the property deals with some of the guy he was involved in. And there was this whole thing about he opens a case against this. So it was a property deal gone wrong.
Yeah.
And he opens a case against this guy to say, no, this guy wants to kill me, da 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 da. And this guy sues him, who said, no, you also wanted to bribe me to hire people to kill your mistress's husband. Like crazy things like that, right? And then that then dies, and then he goes to court, and then the court drops the charges for both of them.
Yeah.
And then he walks away. And then he gets involved with the Russians. I don't know how. They owe him money. He meets these Russians probably at this club where they're shooting, and networks with these people, and then they owe him money, right? All the while, he's not focusing on the business, right? And then he's got a fallout with his accountant. The accountant writes him out to the IRS, to the revenue services. And now the revenue services, boom, throws him with his big tax invoice. And then while we're still focusing on that, he's trying to make margins. He then decides, no, I'm going to look for a cheaper supplier. He goes, looks for a cheaper supplier, only to realize that actually the supplier that he was using, he had this non-exclusive right. You can't use another supplier, unless if this one gives you permission.
Yes.
So the supplier sues him as well, and they win, right? So the accountant wins, the supplier wins, and now he's thinking the game is slowly coming. Then he decides, what he decides to transfer some of the assets of the business out, and he's trying to transfer the assets to his personal. You know how these things are. So he starts registering another business no one knows about, entity, and then he wants to transfer the assets from this one, because everybody knows this one, and transfer it to this other entity where people don't know it.
Yes.
And then what he says is, no, he wants to file for bankruptcy, right?
Sure.
He said, no, I'm bankrupt, so I can't pay these people, right?
Yeah.
So the supplier says, no, they're not taking it, right? This whole thing, it's a scheme.
Yes.
If you trace the money, you'll realize that actually this guy's got money hidden somewhere, right?
Did he have money though?
Yeah, no, he had some money, right? But the problem was he had assets of about 3-point-something million pounds. Yeah. But his debts were about 4-point-something million pounds.
Okay. So literally he's going to go into the street.
Basically, and obviously also the houses were mortgaged, and so the banks were also coming after him to take the houses. So the net effect is he was technically insolvent.
Yes.
And he knew this. Right, so hence the whole scheme. Right, he knew that the game is up. So he's now trying to pack the bag into the money into the bag and run away. So what then happens is, they're after him. Now, what broke and people, he's got associates and people that he works with, and he's been hinting this thing. He's been hinting that, there are people who are after me. They want their money, and they want my house. And there's no way they're going to get my house. I'd rather come out of that house in a box.
That's what he says. That's exactly,
Right. He speaks to his doctor, and he says, no, he's thinking of committing suicide. And the doctor says, no, talk to your wife. And he doesn't talk to his wife. Right. Now, what then breaks the camel's back is, as he was walking out, the nanny is walking in, finds a note on the gate. Right. The note on the gate only for Christopher's attention, right? Foster's attention. So the nanny takes the note, she walks in, Christopher is driving out, right? So obviously the nanny gives him the note. He opens the note. The nanny says his face just went cold, right? Read the thing. The notice says, we are coming for the house. You are not allowed to sell the house. We are coming in a few weeks to take the house, right? And he doesn't tell anyone. He's quiet about it. And so this Sunday, where the whole thing happens, they had a barbecue. They went shooting. After that, they come back, family barbecue, braai. There's a picture where they show them with his wife, kids, smiling, nothing, no signal.
Out of the ordinary,
it's like a normal Sunday afternoon braai. And then, he insisted that he wants to leave early. His wife and daughter still wanted to stay.
Yes.
But he insisted, no, we have to leave. We have to leave, and they leave.
Sure.
And he knows what he's planned.
Yeah.
Right? He knows that he's going to execute this thing. And, boom, that's what happens. But I think for me, there's quite a couple of lessons from this. One obviously is you need to, there's this whole thing, and we'll talk about, there's this whole thing about, I first heard this from, it was a Russian thing that says, stick to the knitting, right? Stick to what you know best, right? So if this is your business and it's doing very well, manage it. Don't try and do other things that you know nothing about.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So I don't know whether it's because as entrepreneurs we are bored,
Yeah.
and people no, let me try something else,
Yeah.
and we think that we can copy the formula that worked here
Somewhere
and
else.
paste it somewhere else and it will work. And in this case, it didn't work, right? So stick to the knitting. But I think the second thing is the danger of ego, because he could have said, "Look, this thing's not working. It's bombing out. Let me just let it, unfold,
Yeah.
and I'll start again."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it means I go back to my mother's house or whatever, take my family back, and then
Pride comes before a fall.
pride. So there's this whole ego thing that I'd rather die
Yes.
than go back.
And it's a psyche thing, Doc, because as you said, he doesn't come from a wealthy family. He comes from humble beginnings. And in that humble beginnings, he probably thought to himself, listen, I've been there. And everybody affluent has seen, everyone, I think we've spoken about it in one of the other episodes where the mindset then becomes you know what, I have come from there and people have seen that I've come from the bottom and I went up. Yeah. And now if I'm going back down, people are going to think, I don't want to be my friends. As Maslow says, the hierarchy of needs, one of the, what is to be part of a society. Now you're in this affluent society and you left that society of yours where you didn't have anything. Yeah. And then now situations, and the worst thing is that your own situation, like it's your own fault that you're in that situation. It wasn't like the market fell or whatever fell. No, it was your own situation, and that situation then led to the demise of your whole family and everything else. And now you're thinking to yourself, listen, I can't go back there.
And fine, okay, say you can't go back there. That's fine. But why kill your kids and your wife? For me, that doesn't make sense. I'm not saying it's okay to kill yourself, but why then eliminate everybody else, right? And I think for me, it's the whole thing, and I think it's the foundation of what this podcast is about. To say you're gonna fail, you're gonna make mistakes.
True.
Right?
That's
it's
true.
not the end of the world.
That's
the sky is not going to fall because you blundered, you made a mistake. Yeah. The sun will still rise again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you'll try again. And in fact, it's part and parcel of being an entrepreneur.
True.
That you're gonna make mistakes, but you're making mistakes moving forward.
Yeah.
Because the goal is you don't want to make the same mistake over and over and over again.
Yeah,
then you're not learning anything. That's insanity, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But you want to be making mistakes going forward. He made mistakes, right? And he's smarter. He could have gotten back and start again. This time he's wiser, he's smarter.
Yes.
But there is, in conclusion, so how do you counter this? There's one of my favorite books, and I think we have reviewed it. Ego is the Enemy, right?
Yes.
By Ryan Holiday, and he talks about that to say, if you have ego, you need to be able to find a way of taming it. All of us have egos, all of us,
Especially
right?
men.
Okay, I wasn't that way, but it's very rare for someone to say, especially me, I have ego.
Oh, no, not me. I said men.
Men, no, of course. In fact,
I used to, but not anymore.
Of course. In fact, if you look at the stories that we have covered, most of them are men, right? Because I don't know whether it's testosterone or what, but men obviously are prone to this big ego. With big ego comes huge risks.
Yes.
So in the book, Ego is the Enemy, what Ryan Holiday says is there's actually a way to manage this. We all have it, but the goal is to tame it before it becomes too big and it becomes this vulture that you can't control. And basically, how do you control it? There's a whole thing called the Shamrock theory, and he writes about it in the book. It's plus minus equals. Right? Plus minus equals. And basically what it says is, as a person, you need to surround yourself with people who are ahead of you, right? They are ahead of you, and they are able to advise you.
Yes.
If you make a mistake, they'll say it's okay.
Yes.
I've made 5 mistakes. Come down, dust yourself off, pick up your face and lift up your face and move on. It's okay. So these are the people who have seen it before and they're ahead. And they understand, so it's a plus.
Yeah.
And he also says you need to surround yourself with a minus. So people who are behind you who are still coming. And how do you do that? Mentoring others, for instance. You are then able to see yourself before where you are now, and you are also able to remind yourself of some of the lessons, right?
That's good.
And equals, you need to surround yourself with people who are equal to the same level as you, which then means that you are always, when you are with your peers, you don't find yourself relaxing while they're working, or celebrating while they're working, or going to shoot animals elsewhere while they're focused on building the business. So it's like you are a sum total of the people you surround yourself with.
Yes.
As they're working, it informs the type of conversations that you find yourself in. So the Shamrock theory talks about surround yourself with people who are ahead of you, plus surround yourself with people, give back, teach, mentor those who are behind you.
Yeah.
It will always keep you humble. It will always remind you of where you come from, but also surround yourself with your peers who are working, because it will remind you not to relax and take things for granted. Unfortunately, Christopher Foster was a loner. A lot of entrepreneurs are loners. We start this thing, people think we're crazy. You're the only one who believes in this. And you somehow fake it until you make it, right?
Yes.
But it's a thin line between ambition and arrogance, right? It's a very thin line, and if there's no one around you to help you with understanding the line between arrogance and ambition, you're likely going to end up with what Christopher Foster has done, finishing everything. So here there is no failing forward. There was failing, and that was the end.
And he actually took it to failing.
Yeah.
Done. Because he failed.
And that's it. Full
and
stop.
that was it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fail.
It was not a comma.
He's still somewhere in the world.
No.
He failed.
Yeah.
Talking about arrogance, actually the next entrepreneur that I'm going to talk about, funny enough, that's how Maramen. That's how he didn't fail, but he did fail in that moment. And so I'll be talking about Ant Group.
Yes.
For those that don't know Ant Group is, in fact, Alibaba's founder, Jack Ma, he founded Ant Group. And the way it was founded, and for backstory, Jack Ma, he obviously is Alibaba's founder. And he started this thing after seeing what Amazon was doing in the US. And he was like, well, I'm going to do this in China. And obviously, especially for the Chinese, everything is manufactured in China at the time. And he obviously grows this company, and it becomes the East, the Amazon East, Amazon of the East. Yeah. Yes. And it's probably still just as well. It's not obviously as big as Amazon, but it is a big company. Then what he then did is in 2004, to support Alibaba, he created Alipay.
Yes.
And then from Alipay, he created this group called Ant Group that supported basically the financial services side of Alibaba. They then went into a whole lot of diversification within the financial industry, started lending money, they started insurance, they started almost like a banking app, basically, Paygate in there. And it's huge. It was big. In fact, it is still big. I don't even know why I say it was.
And I think part of it being big is obviously the Chinese economy is closed off.
And it's huge. I mean, there's a billion.
What, 1 point something. Last time I checked the stats, 1 point something.
Yeah,
billion,
1.49.
billion.
Yeah.
Billion, and it's a market that is not open to.
And it thrives within itself.
Yeah.
And the craziest part is now you take that and then you multiply it by shipping all over the world. Obviously, it's gonna it's a no-brainer. It's massive. So So yeah, they obviously grew this company to do all the other financial aspects of it. Like I said, wealth management, insurance, credit scoring. It became it became one of the biggest in 2020. And group, so it transformed itself into a, one of the biggest financial services companies in the world as a startup, right? Started in 2004, come to 2020. By the time in 2020 hit, they had 1 billion users. 1 billion. Dog, think about this.
Yes.
Billion users on Ant Group. Somewhere, somehow, someone was using Ant Group for something. 1 billion. That I don't even think.
This is like a unicorn.
It is, no. But there's unicorns, and then there is when something hits 100 million. 100 billion, they call it something else. I forgot now. But
Super unicorn.
it was something like that.
Golden
Also,
unicorn.
it was some other what you call this, some other animal as well. Yeah, but yeah. So it then hit that status where it got 1 billion users by 2020 globally. Its business model combined with financial services and digital platform made it a symbol of innovation in China's tech scene. Right.
So is this the same time as Alibaba is doing?
Yeah, obviously. So I think what actually happened is they saw that this thing could stand on its own after Alibaba was being used so much. They then obviously again diversified the portfolio within Jack Ma's side, and then he started Ant Group. Ant Group was obviously the financial leg of it, and
So it's like I'm selling cars and I decide I'm going to open a financial services.
yes, because you're already financing cars anyway.
Financing cars,
Yes,
yeah. Okay.
it's exactly like that. And except now, because everyone is using it, they're trusting it enough to then open up another section, or other insurances and everything, because it's in the day to day. Almost, it's exactly not exactly, but it's like how we pay. Also, we pay, not we pay. What is that chatting one from China as well?
WeChat.
WeChat, yes. Almost like what WeChat did with it was social media, then they had other aspects of it, selling, banking. But this time what they did is it became a faction of its own. And that then obviously again grew into this amazing company. They actually, I think in 2020, November 2020, they wanted to go public. And it would have been the biggest IPO in history because they wanted to raise $35 billion, give or take. $35 billion at a valuation of $300 billion. Dog, 300 billion as a startup, like you come from, like it's, and I mean, it's understandable for it to be that big because you have 1 billion people using your financial services. 1 billion, like, like, dog, I still can't even fathom how much that is. There's only 8 billion people in the world, and you're servicing more than 10% of them, or 15% or so of the world. Anyway, the IPO is going to be in Shanghai. It's going to be in Hong Kong as well, both stock exchanges. And just before it happened, this is where obviously things go, the other way. So he goes into a conference. There is some other conference. I think it's called. I think it was some conference in China, and he started criticizing the financial, the
Restrictive.
Yeah, he started questioning China's banking or financial things. Basically, he started criticizing the government without criticizing the government, but criticizing the way things are run within the financial industry in China. And he goes there.
And I mean, the Chinese model is they call it capitalism with Chinese characteristics, which basically says there's the biggest enterprises in China are state-owned.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you say a financial system in China, it's a government financial system.
Yes, it really is. I mean, all of these Chinese guys, we think of Huawei, we think of WeChat, we think of Alibaba, all of these benefited
Yeah.
from the government obviously putting their hands in and helping them grow all over the world.
It's quite interesting that in South Africa or most countries outside China is you you kind of have the best systems, best skills in the private sector.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Government. Government. In China it's the other way around. The best skills.
Be careful what you say.
Yeah, I mustn't be like Jack Ma. The best skills in China in the private sector. It's in the government sector actually.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Which
quite
is actually clever.
Yeah.
I think if a lot of the world did that, they would quickly grow. And I mean, China's the fastest growing economy in the world, and it's still growing, and it's right behind the US at the moment, you know. And obviously, you can see with the US sanctioning and the whole thing that you see that they're scared. But in any case,
So yeah.
so one of the things maybe let's actually stick to why this was a problem for him to criticize in that way. I remember watching a video of Russian President Vladimir Putin, the real gangster, the real gangster of the world, and he was talking to an oligarch within the construction or mining, one of the two. And he was telling this guy off, and he was telling him that I will take this company and give it to someone
Oh my
else.
word, it's in here.
Yes.
Yukos.
Yes.
Mikhail Khodorkovsky. I know the story. Oh my word. I'm going to talk about that. Why are you
Yes.
stealing my story? Anyway. Yes.
But it reminds me of that,
Yukos,
right?
that's the
and
company.
how and he was shouting at him with video cameras on him. You're telling him straight to say, listen, I will take this company away from you and I will give it to someone else.
Putin, straightforward. If you're in business, stick to business. If you're in politics, stick to don't mix the two.
Don't mix the two. And basically, that's what happened with Jack. Jack, the problem was, again, when you think you are as big as you think you are, then it becomes a bit of a problem. And I like what you're just saying now around the Ego is the Enemy book, around how you should surround yourself and always remind yourself how you even got there. Because if you actually start thinking about how did I actually get here, you start actually understanding that I'm not in the place. I'm not in the place to start criticizing the very people that actually are maybe helping me, you know. And maybe we can say that certain, maybe Alibaba, he grew it naturally, cool, whatever. But the other side of it is that there will always be regulations that help you. Sometimes the government doesn't obviously help you with money.
Yeah.
You know, they help you with regulations to say these incentives, these what. Then it becomes cheaper for you.
But also restricting a biggest competitor, Amazon.
Exactly, Amazon.
Restricting it to say you
Exactly.
can't come in here. It's to your advantage.
Exactly. Now you think you almost. Hey,
So,
Doug, I can't even believe
so what does he say?
So he goes into this conference, right? And then he says that, so he starts criticizing Chinese financial regulators and calling them too conservative, right? And likely, he likens the country to the banking system, like to pawn shops.
What?
Yeah, he likens it to pawn shops, dog. And he says the comments were seen as a direct challenge to the government control over financial
Xi
systems.
Jinping was not impressed.
Obviously, the richest guy in your whole country is great. If you can't take care of that guy, what that whole uproar, the whole thing about China is that I want to say propaganda, but it is a propaganda machine where if people start fractioning off, then you're losing the country. And we know, I mean, it's a principle. I mean, the Bible even says where there's no unity, God commands a blessing. Where there's unity, God commands a blessing. Now, obviously, the opposite of that is that once someone starts factioning things off, what's going to happen? The thing is going to go off on its own, in its own direction. And there's going to start being a whole lot of fighting and everything else.
So did he say that?
Like he said that.
Oh my word.
likened
I'm
it
definitely
like
sure
a
the room must have went silent.
Well, I mean, obviously, he was during an interview. It was like one of those one-on-one interviews.
Where was this? Hong Kong?
It was in China.
Okay.
It was in China. Was it in China? It was in China. But it was a
Beijing
local.
topic.
Yeah, it was a Beijing conference. that he had this.
Shucks. Okay.
So yes,
He's
let's
brave, this guy.
So I don't even think it took like a month. Within a few weeks, within a few days, what happened was, so it says the Chinese regulators began to scrutinize Ant Group business model, particularly in the consumer lending services. Then the Ant Group's micro lending platform had become a massive part of the business, but they operated in a gray area of the regulations. Now, the fact that he didn't even know this, to say, clearly they left him. You know what I mean? Because, as you said, there's probably more clever people in the government of China than in the within the private sector in China, and these guys probably knew what they were doing, because if Ant Group had an IPO and it was seen as it is, it's the image then is portrayed on China, that China is this innovative country, that China is this mammoth of a country that knows financial services, because how are 1 billion people using this and no one is questioning it or whatever. So I mean, this very thing that it says it was within the gray area, that was just the government protecting them. That was just the government saying, listen, go and do whatever you need to do. You know what I mean? So it says, Ant Group facility loans it facilitates loans by partnering with traditional banks, but regulators raise concerns about this risk involved. So just something small.
They're coming after you.
You know what I mean? So he says new regulations were introduced that required Ant to hold more capital against the loan it facilitated. And strict oversight was placed on fintech firm. Ant Group was ordered to restructure itself into a financial holdings company, just like the banks. Now they became a bank. Yeah. So this whole thing of they could be fast, they could be regulations now put them under the same problems that the other banks had, which meant that they can't grow as fast, they can't lend as easy, they can't keep everything now happens to be within a certain box now. In any case, so the aftermath of this whole thing was that the IPO was scrapped, and Ant Group valuation took a major hit on that. The company was forced to scale back its expansion plans, particularly in the lending and wealth management business. And then the craziest thing is, during that time after that, China's so swift, guys. Then what happened was he went missing. There was a time, you remember the story.
People thought he's dead at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. They just silenced for a whole few months, in fact, where he was silenced, and then eventually he came out with a statement from some apartment of his after a very long time to say, guys, I'm good, things whatever. Now you don't even hear of Jack Ma. Yeah. Like, I haven't, in fact, the last interview I saw was around about that time when he did that statement. Now you don't even hear about him. I didn't even see him in the Forbes list anymore.
Well, there's this thing that he's teaching now, lecturing somewhere,
You'll lecture.
Shamrock theory?
Yes.
Minus.
Yes, right? You'll never make that mistake.
Yeah, minus, you're not going to teach.
Yep.
And it humbles you as well.
Yep.
Wow.
So the lessons here, I mean, are simple, right? Stay in your lane. The very thing you just said.
Stick to the knitting.
Stick to the knitting. Yeah. Understand where you're growing from. Understand your business enough to see where the shortfalls are. Because if you understand, in fact, there's a book we read, Doc. I'm not sure. I forgot which book it is. Or was it a podcast I listened to? I don't know. And they were talking about know where you will fail. Know where you will fail. In fact, it was a podcast, and they were talking about how what could go wrong. That was those exact words. Ask yourself what could go wrong.
It's not Charlie Munger or something.
I think it was Charlie Munger. They were talking about, yes, it was in Charlie Munger's book called
Almanac.
Yes, Poor Charlie's Almanac. Love that book. But in any case, it was in that book where he says what could go wrong. Understand what could go wrong, and now in that place, understand, okay, what can I do to counter what could go wrong? Now, obviously, he clearly didn't know what could go wrong. I think I don't mind him maybe speaking to regulators and kind of like getting to them and kind of like bringing a certain side. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And in this sense, he said it the very wrong way publicly, in the whole, so that the whole world can see it, criticizing the very people that are actually helping him grow.
And I mean, in fact, it was not just him. I mean, there were kind of, I think at some point, or was it subsequent to that interview, China then had this whole massive crackdown on some of these companies who were seen to be doing business overseas in the US, listing in the US, and things like that. And I remember there was a time where even schools, tutorial schools, they were also clamped down. It was a whole massive thing, including obviously Alibaba.
Yes. All of them. Even WeChat had that whole crackdown. Huawei. In fact, Huawei, I think, was kind of like, for them, it was more of a, they've always been they've always been straight. They've always been honest with China. In fact, they took the biggest hit when the US said anyone working with Chinese companies is going to get sanctioned, not sanctioned, but their taxes and everything going up. And that's the thing, Doc, is that very thing you're talking about. It's very important because I think it is around about that time where China was just like, you guys, you speak too much, actually. You all speak too much.
It's like the Icarus deception story. You know the Icarus deception story?
No.
Daedalus gets arrested. It's a Greek mythology. He gets arrested because he angered the king, and the king throws him into this tall, massive tower with his kid, Icarus, right? And then Icarus, they then do wings because they're at the top next in the ocean, like this. And then they do wings out of wax because there was obviously candles there. You know? So they do wings out of wax and plug themselves into the wax and they jump off, right? And they fly. So Dandelion says to his son, the rules are fairly straightforward. Don't fly high up close to the sun. Because if you fly up high close to the sun, it's going to melt. And if it melts, you're going to fall in.
Yes, I remember that story.
Right? So it's the same thing. They fall out, they jump off. Now, Icarus is excited. He's flying. He's enjoying this thing. Like, wow, feels so great. And he's doing all these maneuvers. And then he flies very close to the sun and wax melts and he fell off. So it's as if these Chinese entrepreneurs enjoyed the ride and they forgot that, Xi Jinping is the sun. If you fly very close to him, your wings will melt.
Yeah.
And I think it was also a reminder to the others who were watching.
Yes.
Say, don't fly very close to the sun, otherwise you'll have your wings clipped off. And I think it goes with most countries, entrepreneurs in most countries where the government is very, very sensitive.
Yes.
You don't just say
don't touch
whatever.
me on my studio.
Yeah, you don't just say whatever you feel about the government. You can say it in the US.
I was about to say, US is the only place.
You can say it in the US. You can say it even here,
A South African criticized them.
Yeah, But you can't, there are some governments that are very sensitive. You can't, you vanish.
Russia.
Right?
Russia, you actually vanish.
Mikhail Khodorkovsky went to jail. Right? Went to jail for years. And when he was about to come out, they said, no, you did not meet the conditions to come out because you refused to go for knitting classes. And here's a man. Part of your part of your rehabilitation is you must go for knitting classes. A man, like this is, he refused. And they said, no, because you refused to go, you refused to go for knitting classes. We're extending your thing, extra 2 years.
It sounds like an insurance company.
Right? So some governments are very sensitive. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, I think you need to know, especially if you're expanding into other countries, you need to know the rules. Read the room.
He thought of himself as an American. That's why. He thought he has...
I mean, I remember when they visited, there was a time, remember he came to South Africa? And I think they were doing a whole tour and they went to Kenya as well.
Yes.
And one of the newspaper headlines said something along the lines of Jack Ma and other 30-something billionaires Kenya. That is unheard of in China. These guys are anonymous billionaires, right? They're not rock stars like in the US. And he was now seemingly becoming bigger than
China itself.
Than China itself. And, the big man doesn't like it.
Yeah, because again, you don't want to faction anything. When everything is a well-oiled machine, know where you're working, and do what you need to do.
Awesome. Is that a pod?
That is a pod, Doc.
Awesome. Take us home.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning into Fail Freud Friday on this episode. Again, like, subscribe, and really comment. Really comment. It's actually very cool that we got some comments out of the episodes we had, and we just started talking to the people. Keep them coming. And yes, we will see you in the next episode.
Great.